Hi everyone, this short video is going to discuss how to write a paraphrase. So let's get started. Before we talk about how to write a paraphrase, we should probably talk about what is a paraphrase. At its most basic, a paraphrase is a restatement of a specific idea within a larger text. So it's shorter than a summary and longer usually than a single quote. A paraphrase should be about the same length as the portion of the source that you're using. A paraphrase should be in your own words, and a paraphrase has to represent the entire idea that you're paraphrasing. You can't really pick and choose which parts to leave in and which parts to take out. So why use a paraphrase? After all, wouldn't it be easier to just go through and quote everything? Well, maybe, but quoting all of the sources isn't the most effective way to write, because what tends to happen if you quote too much is the voice of your paper, the way it sounds or flows, becomes kind of an awkward patchwork. Paraphrasing allows us to do a couple of things. First of all, it helps us demonstrate understanding. When you paraphrase a text, it means that you understand what the text says and why it's saying it. It can often clarify things for your reader. So instead of dropping in difficult to follow statistics, a paraphrase could almost translate those statistics into something meaningful for a reader. A paraphrase might give context for an argument or a quote. For instance, maybe there's a specific quotation you want to use in your paper, but you need a little bit of background to build up to it. A paraphrase might be the thing you're looking for. And finally, use a paraphrase when the idea is important, but the words themselves are not memorable. If you could say it yourself in your own words without changing the meaning of what the text says, and it doesn't lose any of its importance or interest, you should probably paraphrase. So let's talk about how to write a paraphrase. This is going to look really similar to how to write a summary because step 1 and step 2 involve reading. So you have to read the source, and then you have to reread the source. Make sure you're looking up words you don't know, you look up references you don't understand, and make sure that as you're reading, you're really working with the text. You're taking notes or you're annotating, because that's going to help you remember the text better. And you need to remember the text better because when you write a paraphrase, step 3 is to turn the source over or close it. Basically, you don't want to look at the source as you're writing your paraphrase. One of the biggest mistakes students make that tends to turn into plagiarism is when they pull too much from a source and they don't really mean to. This happens because oftentimes as we're reading, the wording sounds so natural and so good that it's hard to figure out how we'd say it better. It's kind of the equivalent of if you're listening to a song on the radio and trying to remember a different song. It's nearly impossible to come up with that other song because the first song is already in your head. So turn your source over, shut off your screen, close the book, do whatever you can so that you're not looking at the source, and then do your best to write whatever you remember. Okay, here's the important one. Step 4, check your paraphrase. You have to look for a couple of different things. First of all, no exact wording. If you use 3 or more words in a row from the original source, it has to be in quotations. Period. 3 words is the cutoff. Once you have 3 words, you have a quote. You should not repeat the organization of the original, and you should not repeat the sentence structure. So this is where it gets tricky and where it's really important you're not looking at that original text. What you want to do as you paraphrase is to put things in your own words and express them in your own way. A paraphrase is not simply writing out a quote and then putting synonyms in for a couple of words. And Turnitin will actually pick out those paraphrases where you're replicating and repeating the sentence structure of the original. So be careful you're not doing that. If you do find any of these mistakes, of course you want to go ahead and revise. Okay, step 5, include a signal phrase. A paraphrase is very similar to a summary in that you have to introduce it. Remember, a paraphrase is somebody else's idea, but it's your words. And because it's your words, it's hard to see where it starts if you don't use that signal phrase. So remember, author's last name or first name, or book title or article title, plus an action verb. Bob Smith argues in his article, blah, blah, blah. Step 6. If your original source has numbered pages, you need parenthetical citation. That's those strange looking little parentheses at the end of MLA format. Now, if you're using an internet source that does not have numbered pages, you're not going to have a parenthetical citation at the end. If you haven't introduced the author's full name at the beginning, you can put it at the end, but otherwise nothing will go there. Which makes step 7 really important. You have to include some sort of transition or discussion. The paraphrase should never stand on its own. It should always lead into some discussion of how that idea is essential to understanding your argument or your thesis. So a strong paraphrase does a few things. It translates a specific idea for a reader. It uses a signal phrase to begin. It makes it clear that all the ideas in the paraphrase belong to another author. And it uses the present tense, the same as a summary. A paraphrase does not use memorable words or phrases from the original. If wording is that memorable that you cannot change it, you should probably be quoting. A paraphrase does not follow the original's organization or sentence structure. It's hard to organize stuff. It's hard to figure out just how you want to say something, so you can't copy another writer. And finally, a paraphrase does not add any other ideas. It doesn't interpret those ideas. It simply presents what the author has said in your own words. So that's what a paraphrase is and how to write it. In our next video, we're going to be talking about specific examples of paraphrases and how to make sure that you're doing them correctly.